Testing 1, 2, 3. Good afternoon. I'd like to welcome everyone to this afternoon's council meeting. I'd like to start with land acknowledgement. Councilor.
Thank you, Mayor Waters. The lands we know today as the Township of Centre Wellington have been home to Indigenous peoples since time immemorial. We acknowledge that we are on the treaty lands and traditional territory of the Anishinaabe and the Haudenosaunee. With increasing encroachment by non-Indigenous settlers in the Township of Centre Wellington, the Anishinaabe and the Haudenosaunee could not continue their traditional lifestyle and settled in their villages along the Credit River and in the Grand River Valley. These Indigenous nations uphold their treaty rights within our jurisdiction. Today, the Township of Centre Wellington remains home to Indigenous peoples from across Turtle Island, and we are grateful to have the opportunity to share and respect Mother Earth and are committed to building constructive and cooperative relations with Indigenous nations.
Thank you, Councillor Wilton. Is there addendums and corrections to the agenda? Seeing none. Item number 4, disclosure of pecuniary interest under the Municipal Conflict of Interest Act.
Thank you, Mayor. With 8.2, the parking regarding the software provision and enforcement, I have a potential pecuniary interest in the township's parking strategy. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Wilton.
Thank you, Mayor Waters. I do have a few conflicts on today's agenda, so hang tight here. So I have a conflict with the consent item 7.5, so I'm not sure if that has to come out of the consent vote, but that's one I have. And MHBC did provide heritage impact assessment for that project. And I have conflict of interest with reports 8.3, 8.6, and 8.7, again, because MHBC is providing planning services for those projects. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll move down to item 5, presentation and announcements, and item 5.1, Mayor's County Council report. So a few things I'd like to bring forward. When in the area of planning, one of the committees that I'm involved with is that there's a trail work plan this summer for 2024, consisting of Kissing Bridge, Rail for Trails. So they're looking right now. There's a number of folks that are involved with this, and they're looking at a possible crossing of the Conestoga River at that location. And I know the county is working with the region on that. So this summer county staff will be looking at that and adding some support that way. Not think it'll be financial, but any planning issues that there may be. Also, as it pertains to more trails, Neighborwoods, they're involved with the Trestle Bridge Trail. And last year they had done some buckhorn removals along that section, and they're also this year planning to plant native trees and shrubs along the trail for 2024, which is good. Part of the planning meeting, we had climate change and sustainability, our annual report, and I passed out a couple of brochures there. That way you can take a look at that, and then maybe at our next meeting, if things come out of that, we can chat about that. But it's just the highlights of what happened out of 2023. And then moving down to solid waste. Solid waste is very interesting these days. We're looking at a whole bunch of things. There was some discussion on the Ross Bay and Elora waste facility in terms of upgrades. Right now, there's some budget money for both Ross Bay and for the Elora transfer station, and there's been much discussion at the county or the committee level in terms of really kind of more getting an understanding of where we're going with the waste management whole scenario, just given we're going to have user responsibility, just where we're going and generally with waste management. So right now, there's at the last committee meeting, we put it back to staff to bring back a further report in terms of sort of where do you anticipate we're going to be with all these things that are sort of coming within the next year and a half. So that's a really important discussion because it's going to affect owners of businesses in both communities if some of the waste is not being picked up that way. So anyways, more to come on that one. And then, GRCA, I have nothing to report, but we do have a meeting coming up on April the 26th. And then after that meeting, I'll have some updates from the GRCA. Previous meeting was mostly on Bing Island and sort of out of our area, but I'll bring some information to council at my next report. And so I'm going to go to item 5.2. Oh, any comments, questions? Yes, as relates to my little report. Yes.
To you, Mayor Waters. So at county level, with the solid waste management, I've sort of been hearing that there could be where they're going to mandate people to use the regular $2 garbage bags and not be able to take their garbage bags to the station. Do you know, can you add to that?
That one is still sort of up there in terms of discussions. It's really sort of figuring out where we're going with the whole waste management part of it. It's become fairly complicated given they're looking at producers getting involved with collection that way for personal waste, but not necessarily picking up waste at the doorstop for businesses. So there's a bit of confusion there right now. So yeah, there's a bigger discussion, and I know, and understandably, I think the committee's struggling a little bit in a good way, just to get some additional information that way, and then work through some of these scenarios with staff. So, but I'll as soon as I have some more tangible, I just wanted to put it out there that we are kind of struggling with that, but I just wanted to put it out there that you know, we're obviously working towards a good scenario. So then now I'll move down to item 5.2, Councillors Committee's updates. Any updates from Council? Councillor Wilton.
Sure. Just a quick update on the Fergus BIA. I did have a meeting this past Tuesday, and it was good that staff came to do a full kind of overview of what's happening with the St. David Street project, and I think some good conversations happened around kind of the detail of the project, and also communications and signage and all of that to make sure people know that Fergus is still very much open for business as the project unfolds. So I think that was positive. And yeah, the rest of the BIA meeting was lots of planning for all their festivals this summer. So it'll still be a busy downtown this summer. So that's.
Thank you for that update. Any other councillors in their committees? Yes, Councillor Jefferson.
Thank you, Mayor Waters. Actually, just as an update for the Elora BIA, there's an executive meeting tonight at the Shepherd's Pub at 6:30. They're going to be discussing the Canada Food Day, which is going to be a large event on July 30th, and a lot of the different beautification efforts, and that the Elora Sculpture Project is back up and looking for submissions. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Jefferson. Any other committee information? Okay. So let's now move down to, yes, go ahead.
I'll just do a really quick update on the hospital board, and just there was a meeting a couple weeks ago now, I guess. Councillors Adams, Jefferson, and I all attended. I would just say, note the one thing we've been lucky here with Groves that we have not had ER closures on weekends, but Louise Marshall hospital has had several weekend closures, but staffing is a concern at all three hospitals within that board jurisdiction. So something for us to keep an eye on for sure.
Thank you for that update. Yes, Councillor McDonald.
I can speak to something a little bit under Safe Communities. I attended the Drayton Farm Day out in Drayton, Ontario, just up the road. And with me was OPP, the chair of Safe Communities, Angel, and paramedics. And so we were handing out information. I was surprised during the day how many kids came, but there's coloring books that are education coloring books that were put out, and just general information about what Safe Communities does in Wellington County. And it was quite well done, and a lot of people showed up. So that's it.
Thank you for that information, Councillor McDonald. If I don't, any other committee information? Okay, thank you for all that. Now we're going to move down to item number 6, delegations. Yes, you can, I think, yeah. So we have item 6.1, Louisa, you're going to have to tell me how to pronounce your last part of your name. I don't want to...
Do I need to turn it on here? Oh, it's all good. So it's Luisa Vacandio.
Thank you. And you're from MHBC.
That's right.
Yep.
Yeah, correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you and welcome.
Okay. Thank you. Good afternoon, Mayor, members of council. My name is Luisa Vacandio. I am a planner at MHBC Planning. I am here on behalf of our client, the owner of the subject lands of 961 St. David Street. In support of this application. I'm here in support of staff's recommendation for the zoning bylaw amendment application. Thank you for putting the plan up. The zoning bylaw amendment application is in support of this plan of condo proposal for a total of 49 residential units, 12 single detached and 37 townhouse. The zoning bylaw amendment is required in order to implement the zoning to permit this concept. We had a public meeting in August of 2023. Just last year, but we've been working at this with township staff since October 2019, actually, from pre-con until now. And we are now at the point where staff is putting forth a recommendation for approval of this zoning bylaw amendment. And I'm here to fully support and answer any questions that council may have.
Thank you for that, Louisa. Comments, questions from council? Okay, seeing none. Thank you. Now we move down to item 7, consent items. Consent items, agenda items are considered routine in nature and are voted on collectively. We're going to do separately. Okay. However, any member of council may request one or more items to be removed from the consent agenda for separate discussion and or action. So we're going to remove item 7.5. Yeah, we're going to pull that one out, and then we're going to go ahead on the other ones, and then we'll come back on that one. Before I do that, do you have a question?
I'd like to pull one of the consent agenda items, 7.4, for discussion.
Okay.
Please.
Okay. So. .6 through 7, and we're going to vote on those first. Okay. Recommended that the Council of Township of Centre Wellington authorize the mayor and the clerk to execute a shared service agreement with, oh, sorry, wrong one. Where's the recommendation? Apologize. Oh, here we go. Recommendation that the Council of Township of Centre Wellington approve consent agenda items 7.1 through to 7.3 and 7.6 through 7.7. Do I have a mover for that? Councillor Wilton, seconder on that. Councillor McDonald. All those in favor? So moved. Okay, now we'll go back to the first one, which will be What was yours again? Sorry?
7.4.
So was that the first one, 7.4? Yeah. Okay. Okay. So let's open that one first. Yes. What question, comment on that one?
Through you, Chair, to Clerk? Yeah, to Lisa. I'm happy to see that this will be amended through the Ministry of Attorney General. So that means that it has a bit of teeth there. So that's good. Have we had campfires in the front yards? Is that why that's in there?
My understanding from the fire department is yes, there has been an incident of that. So we were clarifying it because it was never the intention.
Okay.
Pat's nodding her head yes. So
Okay, gotcha. Okay, and that's it.
Okay.
Thank you.
The other. Authorize the mayor and clerk to execute a bylaw to amend bylaw 2019-35, being a bylaw to regulate the setting of open air fires in the township of Centre Wellington. Do I have a mover for that? Councillor Wilton, seconder on that. Councillor McDonald, any other comments or questions? No. All those in favor? So moved. Okay. Thank you. Which one now? Where are we?
7.5.
7.5. Yep. So just as a reminder, this is amending agreement 43 West Mill Street encroachment. Report from Colin Baker, Director of Infrastructure, IS 2024-17, and we have a recommendation that the Council of Township of Centre Wellington authorize the Managing Director of Infrastructure Services to execute an amending agreement related to the encroachment of 43 West Mill Street in Elora and authorize through bylaw number 2024-08. Do I have a mover for that? Councillor McDonald, have a seconder on that. Councillor Adams, any comments, questions on that? Yes.
Thank you, through you, Mayor. I actually just had a question. I believe, to my knowledge, this is going to be our first balcony in a long time that's like overhanging a public sidewalk. Do we have any like restrictions of what kind of items can or can't be placed on such type of balconies, or are we concerned with I know in other communities where there's a lot of Airbnbs, the number of people on balconies. I'm just wondering if we could speak to any of the potential safety concerns about items or people on the balconies overlooking public sidewalks, overhanging public sidewalks.
Yeah, thank you for the question. And through Mayor Waters, yeah, so the encroachment agreement, which was approved by council a couple months ago now, really deals with the kind of the parameters of the structure itself and permits the construction placement of that balcony within the municipal road allowance. I think like any disturbance issues, like we've got the noise bylaw that would obviously apply in this case as well. But really the encroachment agreement is focused on, the quality of the structure, making sure it's kept in proper form, still is being maintained properly. But I think there's other mechanisms to kind of deal with maybe the kind of disruption, whether it's, kind of noise related disruptions that would be associated with the balcony.
And I think technically why it's back here, it was, I think it was approved originally, but it came back because there were some differences or I think literally in inches or something like that in order for it to, and I think we had to bring it back. Staff would recommend, I talked to legal to bring it back to have a discussion. So it's really pretty much the same thing as what it was before, but there was some technical things to it. So Councillor Adams.
For you, Mayor, thank you. I did read the report. I did realize that's what was the change in the agreement. Just because it was back on the agenda, I thought I was just asking if there was concern from staff for any of those other items.
Any other questions or comments? Okay, we had a first and a seconder. All those in, with any further comments? No, seeing none. All those in favor? So moved. Thank you. Thank you. We're down now to consideration of reports. 8.1 Stormwater Management Master Plan Preliminary Preferred Alternative Report. Is Ryan going to speak to this? Yes. Hi, Ryan. And we're going to get an update on this. Thanks for coming to council today.
Yeah, great. Thank you very much for having me, Mayor and Council. My name is Ryan Maiden. I'm the project manager from the engineering team on the Stormwater Management Master Plan. We are reaching the final stages of our study process here. So today we'll be presenting our preliminary preferred alternatives for the township. So a little bit of background on the Stormwater Management Master Plan. Some of the key issues related to stormwater for the studies to investigate include the resilience of existing infrastructure to climate change, addressing additional stresses caused by projected growth, operation and maintenance requirements of aging infrastructure, flood safety and mitigation, introducing low impact developments or LIDs and green infrastructure, and water quality protection and stormwater temperature impacts. So today from WSP, we have Matt Senior, and from Ron Scheckenberger and Associates, Ron Scheckenberger, to present our preliminary preferred alternatives. And I'll invite them up at this time. Thank you.
Hello, so I'm Matt Senior from WSP, and this is Ron Scheckenberger from Scheckenberger and Associates. So if we could go to the next slide. Oh, I have control. Yes. Look at that. So we've had 2 PICs so far, so many of you may have seen some of this information already, but the content is really intended for the Fergus, Elora, and Salem areas. I think Ryan spoke to some of the intent of the master plan, but basically the key points are summarized there. So the intent is to assess the effectiveness of stormwater drainage systems. So that's focused on storm sewers, overland flow routes, which are typically roadways, and stormwater management ponds and facilities. We are looking at finding and evaluating alternative solutions where deficiencies and issues are identified, and then coming up with what the cost implications of those solutions would be, both in the short and the long term, and an implementation plan or phasing on how to implement those suggested recommendations. And then, as Ryan mentioned as well, one of the things that we're looking at is approaches such as low impact development, which is commonly called LID. It's also known as green infrastructure. It's focused on stormwater techniques that basically mimic natural processes that focus on source controls at the location where the runoff is created, focus on replicating the hydrologic cycle and promoting infiltration rather than just having runoff. In terms of some of the mapping data that we had gone through, one of the things we did was look at topography data for the communities to see how things were draining. Things we commonly look for with that kind of process is where overland flow goes, whether it generally parallels the existing road network or if it goes through private property, which can sometimes be problematic. We also look for areas where there may be depression pondings and ponded areas like that, which again can also be problematic from a drainage point of view. Generally, what we found is actually that most things in the communities of Elora, Salem, and Fergus are actually quite well graded because everything is generally sloped towards the Grand and then Irvine Creek and Elora. We don't see a lot of the common problems that we have seen in other municipalities. Things are generally well graded. There's very few depression areas and things like that. When we look at the results, what we have done is we've developed what's called a hydrologic and hydraulic model. So it's basically a replication of the existing storm drainage system within the community. So it includes hydrology, which is the representation of land use and cover, and how when it rains, how much of that becomes runoff and is directed to the storm drainage system. And then hydraulics, which are the elements which convey those flows to receivers. So, and within the hydraulic system, it's a combination, we call it a dual drainage system because it models both the minor system, which is the storm sewer, so the pipes that are in the ground that convey low flows towards the receivers, and then the overland flow or the major system, which is roadways generally. When the capacity of the storm sewer is reached, things flow on the surface, and then where do those things go? So we have an integrated model that models all of those things and assesses the capacity of those drainage systems. With respect to the storm sewer system, generally we found that about half of the sewers could meet the current standard, which is conveyance of a 1 in 5 year storm event without surcharging. Surcharging meaning the water level goes above the top of the pipe, so it's pressure flow, which is not how they're intended to flow. They're intended to flow free flow for that storm event. Generally, though, even with those results, you have to be aware that sometimes that may not necessarily result in drainage issues. In some cases, even if it flows to surface, there's enough capacity on the surface for things to flow. In some cases, even if the storm sewer surcharges, there's a relatively low risk because in some cases, if you have a disconnected sump pump or a weeper that goes to surface and there's no connection to a storm sewer, there's no risk of backwater or any impacts to residences. And then in the key finding, I think, to relate all of this back to it is also that one of the things we did at the outset of the study was a request from township staff where there were known drainage issues and problems within the study area limits. And there were very few areas that were noted. Most of the issues that were noted related to sort of nuisance things and things in springtime, spring freshet, ponding, things like that. Nothing major, no primary issues with respect to drainage systems. And again, the overland flow results from the modeling shows very similar things to what we saw with the topography assessment, which is that things generally flow quite well and drain towards Grand River and Irvine Creek. So in terms of upgrades and assessments to the storm sewer system where deficiencies were identified, we went through an alternative assessment process to determine what a preferred approach would be. So through the class environmental assessment process, the do nothing option is always presented as an option. The second option was to upgrade to meet current township standards, which is a 1 in 5 year storm event. And then we also considered a more robust standard, which would be upgrading storm sewers to a 1 in 100 year standard. We screened it through the criteria that are listed above there. So functionality, social environment, natural environment, economic, and then use those weighted to determine what the overall ranking would be. Overall, we determined that the upgrade to the current township standards of a 1 in 5 year storm event was the preferred because it provides a balance of functionality to meet the current township criteria while being fiscally responsible, because obviously the costs associated with further upgrades above that standard are fairly prohibitive. In terms of other recommendations coming out of the study, we took the overall recommendations that were determined where storm sewer upgrades were identified to identify the ones that we were considered to be the highest priority projects. So these are ones where the deficiencies were noted to be particularly large or problematic, or we thought there may be some synergy with already planned capital works for road reconstructions. So those 7 projects there total an estimated construction cost of about $11 million for all of the works that are planned there. And in addition, the rest of the works would be phased out over much longer than 10 years, potentially up to 50 years or more. But those costs, we did a similar costing exercise to see what those would be. We split the cost between the ones that were township roads and then the ones that were county roads. The costs there are noted there. So township roads are $44 million, and then those for county roads are approximately $5 million. Obviously, these costs are significant and would need to be planned for. We went through a review of potential financing options to pay for those things. There are typical options that are there. Ultimately, we were suggesting that the preferred approach is likely some type of stormwater utility or stormwater fee, which is a user pays system. However, it's beyond the scope of our current study to determine the actual form of what that is. So we are recommending that a separate study be undertaken that would determine the approach and the preferred method to implement such a study. And this would be similar to what is already in place in a large number of municipalities in Ontario that are noted there. Kitchener, Waterloo, Guelph, Cambridge all have stormwater utilities. So the recommendation there is obviously to do that study to determine the preferred approach for that method. Other recommendations that are included in the reports in terms of climate change. So we undertook a review of what are known as rainfall intensity, duration, frequency curves. They're statistics of rainfall to determine whether they should be updated. We used available climate change forecasting models to determine what the changes would be expected to be in the future. Based on that, we determined a preferred approach, and we've recommended that the township update their IDF curves to use those new totals, which would increase the totals by approximately 6%. In terms of low impact development, there is a provincial document out known as the draft LID guidelines. They currently remain in draft in the absence of mandatory direction from the province. Our recommendation is that the township require a minimum infiltration or retention target for any new developments of 5 millimeters on site. So basically for the first 5 millimeters of rain, measures have to be taken on site to capture and infiltrate that rainfall. And we found in the past that setting that is a reasonable target, and it also directs developers to using things like low impact development, because if you're forced to provide that amount of infiltration, then you have to do something like that with respect to green infrastructure. In terms of quality control, we've recommended that the township use planned road reconstructions as an opportunity to retroactively provide quality control for roadways in areas that didn't previously have that. So allocating a certain amount of funds to add into those reconstructions to provide stormwater quality controls to benefit the quality of receivers downstream. So we allocated approximately a budget of $450,000 a year for that. In terms of stormwater management ponds, there's a requirement to do every 5 years to check the sediment levels within those ponds and make sure that they're where they sit with respect to cleanout frequency. And then as the ponds begin to age, there will need to be funds allocated for the cleanout of those, which is a typical normal expected occurrence. But as things age, that will be required. So typically every 20 to 25 years. And we've estimated a cost that's, once you average out the number of ponds that Center Wellington has and the age and the time frame for those cleanouts, approximately $690,000 a year. And I guess that was the last slide. So basically, we've brought forward this information to provide to council. Again, some of this for those of you who saw PIC number 2 that we held in Elora like a couple of months ago. Much of this is the same content as that, but obviously to provide the opportunity for everyone to ask questions in advance of then going back, taking that feedback, updating the report, and finalizing it, and then bringing it back with the to council with the notes of study completion. Thank you.
Thank you, Matt. Comments, questions? Yes, Councillor Adams.
Thank you, through you, Mayor. Thank you for the presentation. I'm just wondering if you can go back to the slide where you have like the colored dots. I'm wondering if you could just walk me through a little bit about what actually, which one means. So for example, if we look at the natural environment, we see 3 yellow circles.
Yes.
Does that mean like impact on, or like I'm just not really understanding what this is telling me yet.
So yellow in that case would generally be neutral, that it's neither positive nor negative. So it's sometimes hard to, you want a sort of a friendly way of presenting the information. Okay. But yeah, in that sense, it basically means neutral, because in all cases, you're not really changing anything. Stormwater is still being discharged in the same way to the same receivers. The disruption associated with storm sewer construction is basically the same. There's no real impact because most of it's along roadways. So they're all there's no real discernible difference or impact between the 3 of them with respect to natural environment.
Okay. And just a follow up, if I may. So just kind of like building on that, because I know you also talk about like retention targets and stuff for like new development areas. Yeah. Like, would you consider the recommended approach, the 5-year, like, do you feel like it's being like, are we being innovative? Like, are we like future focused? I'm just wondering if there's no impact being like improvements being done to our natural environment. Again, you're the experts. Just looking for a bit of clarity of my own understanding.
Yeah, there's a
Speed location.
distinction there. So that,
Yeah.
the 5 year, the 1 in 5 year is the design capacity of the storm sewer.
Yeah.
A 5 millimeter is just a depth of rainfall. So basically, when it starts to rain, the first 5 millimeters of that rainfall we're suggesting should be captured and retained on site. So they are, apologies if that wasn't the intent, but they're different things. So yes, I apologize if that wasn't clear.
Any other comments? Councillor McDonald.
To you, Mayor Waters. So I noticed Salem, Water Street and Victoria Street, and Elora, Melville Street, North Queen that we just resurfaced, Irvine Street, Coburn Street, that's kind of needed, and Wilson Crescent. So this is in the next 10 years you're looking at these?
I
Sorry.
have to have the map, to be honest. I can't remember all the street names, but yes, the ones that were highlighted on the figures
That's
and
what's been
numbered,
identified.
those were the ones that were identified for.
Okay.
The ones that are just color coded
Yeah.
are just, those are storm sewers that should be upgraded at some point in time,
some
not
point.
necessarily within the next 10 years.
Gotcha. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, and I would just point out, like, some of those are part of roads that were recently reconstructed, right? So yeah, the intent isn't to go back and upsize, but if as part of a future upgrade or a future capital project, we'd want to revisit the size of the storm sewer system just to make sure it's accommodating the amount of flow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I feel like it would be welcome on North Queen. I'm
For
just going to put that out there. Thank you.
Any other? Yes, Councillor Wilton.
Thank you, Mayor Waters. Colin, you've seen these questions before, so they won't be a surprise. And I know it's slightly outside the scope of this immediate project, but just thinking of some recent swim pond kind of additions and new subdivisions, it seems like we're missing an opportunity to kind of double up with passive recreation and enhance habitat and biodiversity in those places. I'm thinking particularly one near my house on the Sobera development. So I'm just curious. I've seen some really cool swim ponds in other communities where there's lots of walking trails and benches and lots of that kind of passive and then enhanced biodiversity. So I know when you say neutral on the natural environment, there are some examples where you can really do some pretty cool things. So just curious if that came up in the study or when that would come up in our development process.
Well, thanks for the question, Councillor Wilton, and through the mayor. So, yeah, really, that's part of our development process. So we do have guidance within our development manual that provides directions to the consultants working for the developers on how we want to see our ponds. Quite often, we require maintenance access to certain parts of the ponds for future cleanouts, as Matt mentioned, and kind of routine inspection, maintenance. And so those access roads, we've got examples where those do double as trails, and but fair point, some of them aren't connected to anything. They're just kind of dead end. So yeah, definitely something that's on our radar if we're looking at a pond in the design phase to make it part of kind of the active transportation network within the community. As for opportunities for like pollinator species, native species to be planted, like they all are reviewed by landscape architects, and they we come up with a planting plan that's suitable for stormwater ponds. And I think we've got a great example at the Haylock subdivision where there's some educational signage, there's kind of naturalized areas that have been planted purposefully around the pond and become potential for pollinator species to potential habitat for pollinator species. So I think it's something that's definitely on our radar. It's something that we're going to see more of too as we develop more ponds in the community.
So that's great, and I'm glad to hear the Haylock one. So how do we make that more like standard practice then for Center Wellington? Because we're going to be growing a lot over the next. So how do we make that like go above and beyond with these opportunities when we have to do the swim pond facilities?
For sure. Yeah. and through the mayor. So yeah, it really becomes like there's the, you know, kind of the standard that the ministry sets for design, but then we have opportunity in our development manual to take it to the next level. So, and then it becomes a discussion with developers and their designers, you know, what we expect when these ponds are built in the community.
Any other comments, questions? Councillor Walton, yes.
If I may. Thank you, Mayor Waters. Again, you've seen this question before, so I'm intrigued by the idea of the utility, and I know it's beyond the scope of this particular study, and you're recommending it for a future study. But I would just be curious about the user fees, if that's adding an increased tax burden to residents, and how residents could potentially mitigate that fee. Like if you're being charged for water, you can conserve water, but can't I'm just curious how you kind of manage that balance. Thank you.
It's an excellent question, and I've had the opportunity to work on quite a few of these across the province. And the way you basically start out with a stormwater utility is there's a certain amount of the existing taxes that is going to maintaining water infrastructure, stormwater infrastructure specifically. So at the beginning point, you basically look at that quantum, and then you look at the amount of program that you want to see in the future, and then you see whether or not it's adequate. So there's actually a trade-off, because that initial piece comes off, and then there's the amount that comes on through the rate. That said, usually when you're trying to make these types of programs more contemporary, more visionary, looking at stuff, there's an additional expenditure. So that expenditure starts to become the difference, but it's not a total add. Okay, it's only a partial add. And communities really look to how quickly they want to get to their aspirational spending. So if they want to get to their program in day one, obviously the hit is more. Or do they want to phase this in over a 5-year, 10-year period and really start to get more and more closely aligned with what the system costs based upon what the users are using it for?
Do you see in your experience there, they tied, kind of paired with incentive programs then for?
Absolutely. Through the mayor, that's an excellent question. And it's probably one of the most difficult and inconsistent matters across the province is how credit programs are being rolled out. One of the concerns is credit programs take a lot of effort to manage. Both in terms of employees and the administrative element to it, and then the validation process. So some municipalities have actually, believe it or not, stepped back from that. Personally, I'm not really in favor of that, because I feel that there's a social positive to encourage people to start to do more and more on their own properties. So I think there's some reimagining going on right now to credit programs. And the good thing is there's lots of great lessons learned out there. So I think as the community here starts to think forward as to where it wants to go, it's going to be able to do some good research and find out what's working and what's not. Welcome.
Any other comments or questions from, yes, Councillor Jefferson.
Thank you, Mayor Waters. My question is just regarding the provincial guidelines. It states that they're currently pending. When they, or if they go forward, are there other projects for our long-term projects that might be considered for the low impact development? Just because I've been reading that there's a lot of, due to the droughts and wildfires, a lot of places are using their stormwater management to retain water so that they can help with their firefighting within the community. I was just wondering if that's something that's been looked at, or if that's something that would fall out of these guidelines when passed. Thank you.
I think that was sort of two different questions, but yeah, I think the guidelines would mandate a higher target for retention than what we are currently proposing. So the draft guidelines speak to a retention of a 90th percentile rainfall, which means it's sort of up to, typically rainfalls are 90% of the rainfalls are that amount or less. So that ranges depending on location, but it's usually around 27 to 29 millimeters, whereas we're proposing only 5 millimeters. So when and if those guidelines come into effect, it would just enforce or require more LID application for new developments to meet those guidelines. To the second part of your question, it's possible that wet ponds where there is that permanent pool of water that's allocated at the bottom of those could potentially be used as a resource for firefighting and things like that. But I think it would be intended to be more of a one-time thing because they are there for a reason. The reason for the permanent pool of water and ponds is for water quality purposes, because when the stormwater comes in, it's intended to provide that depth for settling of suspended particulate matter that goes in there. So obviously, if you're regularly draining it down, it's not going to be able to provide the water quality function that was intended to provide.
Any other comments or questions from council? I have a couple of comments and some questions probably tied up within those. Especially with all the new development that's being proposed, one of the things that I'm concerned about is having areas of opportunities of infiltration. I think that's a huge one. You know, I look at water as a resource, and obviously it looks like we can handle, I'm happy to hear that it looks like we can handle the water surges very well and push that off. But as you know, that goes into a stream corridor and it's taken away. I look at the water resource, it is a water resource, and it needs to get in the ground because that's really important place to be. So, I'm hoping that as we move forward with developments that we have your experience and expertise and staff's expertise in terms of how we capture that and put it in the ground where it needs to be. I think that's really important resource that we can't, so whether you make stormwater management areas bigger and then have an area of infiltration sort of adjacent to that, whether there is any type of LIDs within the development, I think we need to really think out of the box in terms of how we capture that as much as we can, especially in the new developments. I think there'd be a real opportunity that way. It's hard to sometimes retrofit existing, as you guys know, existing facilities, but I think we have a real opportunity with doubling in size to really capture water. So looking forward to maybe a future discussion on how we do that. And especially, as you're probably aware, we're dealing with a secondary plan right now on the south end of Fergus, be prime opportunity for some interesting things that could happen there. Yes, I did feel, you mentioned the 5-year, as we know, we're getting a lot more 100-year storms. And so I know we've identified those ones that need to be upgraded to 5-year, which is great and fine. But I think even to really do some really hard evaluation on some of our other facilities to say, hey, yeah, we are going to have 100-year. How will this stuff withstand to some of those areas of our infrastructure need to identify? How will they fess up to 100 years storm? Because we're going to, as you know, we're going to have more of those, and maybe 1 or 2 possibly a year. So that for me is very concerning, and it's something that we need to sort of get our community ready for. It's not just here, but it's all over the place. But I think to be proactive, I think we need to identify those things that we have to be concerned about these. But looking for your feedback that way. You guys always amaze me in terms of looking at road systems as tributaries, because if the roads, if the drainage areas don't work, the roads become the tributaries for the water. And the one thing we do have in our urban area, we have lots of that, so potentially a lot of capacity that way. So, but the question I do have is, once we get beyond sort of that influence of the river where everything's draining towards that, and as you're probably aware, we're going to have more developments outside that's the area that concerns me more, not sort of the immediate area to the river. It's the areas beyond that area, and how do we deal with that? And again, things through infiltration or sort of out of box thinking. I think we got to think about those areas. But anyways, those are some of my comments. So okay, any other questions, comments from Council? Okay. Well, thank you very much, Matt and Ryan. If there's any other things that we'd like to ask? No? Okay. So we have a recommendation that the Council of Township of Central Wellington receive for information report number IS 2024-07, Central Wellington Stormwater Management Master Plan Preliminary Preferred Alternative. Do I have a mover for that? Councillor Wilton, seconder on that. Councillor Adams, any further comments or questions? Seeing none, all those in favor? So moved. Thank you. Thank you very much, folks. Okay, we're going to move down to item 8.2, parking software provisions and enforcement. And who will be speaking to this? Oh, Adam. Adam, you're somewhere. There you are. Welcome, Adam.
Good afternoon, Mayor Waters. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, just give us a just give us a minute here, Adam.
Absolutely.
I'll let you know when you can. Okay, you can proceed. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Mayor Waters, and through you, apologies I'm not able to attend in person today. My son is under the weather, so I appreciate the flexibility in being able to do this remotely. Here to present the report on parking software and enforcement for 2024. This report effectively provides recommendations and seeks council approval to establish Alpha Technology Systems, Inc. as the vendor of record for the provision, parking enforcement services, and the associated software required for the administration of parking operations for the township. Additionally, staff are seeking council authorization to enable the provision of parking administration services across the county and delegated authority for myself to execute any agreements with member municipalities within the county if required. Alpha Technology Systems, Inc. has been the provider of parking administration software within Wellington County, and the township has invested significantly in the customization required to support our unique parking enforcement needs. As the township represents the most active participant in parking enforcement and the largest proportionate user of the administrative processes, there's an appetite to internalize these processes and the supporting software platform. There is a... Apologies for that, the dog. There is a continued need for parking enforcement within the downtown core areas of Fergus and Elora, and to ensure continuity of services and build on the software infrastructure in Centre Wellington has invested in. It is recommended that Alpha Technology Systems become the vendor of record. The purchasing bylaw and procurement policy allows for a non-competitive procurement process for additional goods or services from the original vendor that were not included in the initial procurement if a change of vendor or such additional services would cause significant inconvenience or substantial duplication of costs for the township. Given the high level of customization already undertaken, staff feel that this single source and establishment of the vendor record is justified. And with that, I'm happy to field any questions the council may have.
Thank you, Adam. Questions, comments for Adam? Yes, Councillor McDonald.
Through you, Mayor Waters. Thank you for zooming in. I'm happy to see that we can do this. This is great. This is about being a good employer too. I'm really happy to see this. I just want to confirm we can do this. So when I look at the administrative side, the software really does provide a lot of the administrative process. And I think we've been paying for those upgrades anyways. So now we're going to be servicing county. That's correct?
Through you, Mayor Waters. Yes, thank you for the question, Councilor McDonald. That is the intent, that we would be providing the services for the county for the administration side of the parking enforcement. That said, I mean, the Township of Centre Wellington is north of 90% of the utilization within the county as it stands present day. So we're happy to take that on as just kind of an internalization of the processes that is currently undertaken by the county.
Thank you so much. Just as a follow-up comment, I do agree. It does provide, like under a strat plan, managing growth while enhancing the community's unique character. It sort of gives us more control, provide innovative and sustainable governments. Totally agree. Do we have enough staff to support this as we move into this?
Again, through you, Mayor Waters, and thanks for the follow-up question. There is a general feel that we do have capacity within our existing staff complement within the legislative services team, most notably the customer service staff, to facilitate this administration. So there will be no additional impact. Point of fact, there is a thought that by internalizing this process, there is a potential cost savings for the township.
Thank you.
Yes, Councillor Wilton.
Thank you, Adam, and through you, Mayor Waters. Yeah, I guess building on Councillor McDonald's questions, I am also curious about the staff capacity and just if we have done a full analysis of how much staff time was actually taken up at the county level to administer this program, and if we know what the return on investment, if we internalize it to Center Wellington, do we know we're going to save money or make money, or are we going to find ourselves in 6 months having to add staff capacity? So I feel like I'm not sure I have enough information to say we're in a position to completely take over for the entire county at this point. So just curious if you can give a few more details on that aspect.
Yeah, certainly. And thank you for the question, Councillor Wilton. Through you, Mayor Waters. Historically, we've been charged a quarter of an FTE through the county, which equates to about 9 hours a week, which is what has been kind of come off our enforcement revenues or the ticketing revenues from a parking standpoint. That equates to approximately $30,000, as was the mark as we reconciled the 2023 activities. So by internalizing, I think there's real opportunity to have some cost savings. Appreciating that it would be a new process for the township, we are confident that we do have capacity within our existing staff complement to facilitate this. So I think there's real opportunity there. And that's kind of in keeping with the notion that all volumes would remain relatively consistent with what they had been in prior years, with the understanding that we are a growing community. But at least for the confines of the 2024 year that we're looking as a bit of a transition year, we do feel that we do have sufficient capacity within our existing staff complement.
Councillor Adams.
Thank you, through you, Mayor. So I just want to confirm we're expecting potential cost savings in like keeping with our currently approved strategy, which is like the program that's been running that we did approve to run again this year, similar to the terms last year, or would that expected savings come with further approvals of the parking strategy, which has yet to be approved as a whole?
Thank you for the question, Councillor Adams, and through you, Mayor Waters. The intent or the expectation is that we would have savings with the existing kind of platform or parking processes that we have in place. There would be no, I guess, growth within that from a revenue standpoint that we would see. It would be strictly on the cost saving side, assuming a one-to-one comparison with the existing parking strategies that we've got in place.
Yes, go ahead.
Just a follow-up to your financial implications here. In that section, there's costs noted for 2024. Were those all costs that have been budgeted for, or is there additional, are we over budget on any of those items?
Excellent question, Councillor Adams. And again, through you, Mayor Waters, those are items that aren't budgeted. Historically, the way we've dealt with our parking program is to run it through capital. So effectively, we're breaking even with the understanding or the hope that we will save some dollars over prior years by internalizing some of those processes. But really, it wouldn't be budgeted from an operational standpoint. It is all with the revenues would offset those anticipated costs. And at least that's the expectation for 2024. So there's no operating budget impact for this.
Through Mayor Waters, and to add to Adam's response there, when we brought the draft parking strategy to council for information, there was a financial implications section there that talked about the costs of what council was approving at the time, which is sort of status quo from the previous years. So these costs are in line with what we had outlined in that report from a financing strategy perspective.
Any other comments, questions from council? Councillor Wilton.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor Waters. I'm not sure if it's a question really, so it might be wait till the call the motion, but I am concerned that we don't have enough information. So even that would have been helpful to have that attached to the report. The report is quite short. It would have been maybe helpful to have some of those parking strategy financial analysis included in this report that came forward today. It's kind of difficult to go back and forth between all the different reports to find all the pieces when there's quite a bit of information in each agenda. So that might be helpful to have a little more of that cost benefit analysis. I'm also curious if there were questions, and maybe this is my question then, with county staff to find out exactly, it was that 9 hours an accurate representation of how much time a person or two people maybe spent at the county administering the program, or were there lots of complaints, people coming in person to file a complaint about their parking ticket? I don't know, that could take up quite a bit of your time if you get somebody in there on a regular basis. So just curious what the process was in terms of the research done with the county to determine the capacity and the time allotted to this program.
Yeah, thank you for the question, Councillor Wilton. Again, through you, Mayor Waters. A lot of it was through discussion, and as you can appreciate, it is a seasonal program, so there were some ebbs and flows, but on balance, we felt that the quarter FTE is fairly representative in terms of what the annual requirements would be to administer the program in its current state. And the hope is that much of the administration processes that have been well developed through our investment in the software are streamlined such that it wouldn't be prohibitive for us to continue down this path. I hope that answers the question.
Any other comments or questions? Maybe I'll make a comment on this. You could almost look at this in some ways as a bit of a test program from May till November, because that's basically the season for enforcement. And I think this might be an opportunity to look at this. I know some of the concerns were that we had purchased the software and basically county was receiving revenue for that, and really we were sort of 90% of the marketplace, I guess, that way. So I think it's an opportunity to look at this over the next 5-6 months to see if this is something that makes sense. I know that the county because we're holding 90% of that of the sort of the work area. They were said to us basically, do you want to take on the whole county, which is there's additional 10%, but the market for those areas are quite small. I think it's sort of Guelph, Aramasa is essentially where the majority. Adam, you could probably jump in to let me know that, but I think it wasn't that much area outside of it, so the vast majority will be here. And I think there might be, like I said, it'll definitely carry the cost of running it, but the hope is to make some money on this as well. So anyways, that's just my thought. Councillor McDonald.
Yeah, I have another thought. In my formal role on the Police Services Board, this is sort of where it initiated. I didn't think it was right to keep the funds when Center Wellington was generating a lot of the parking funds, and really those are funds eventually we can offset tourism costs and different things however we choose. But former Mayor Kelly Linton and it was supported by the board to make sure that the funds went back to Center Wellington. It was only after the fact that we found out that an administrative person at county was being paid to handle all of that, yet us as Center Wellington were paying for the upgrades in the software anyways and some of the training. So I'm really happy that this is all coming back to us, however it pans out. And if our treasurer is saying that we can handle it, then I'm okay with that. But that's just some background on how it came to us in the first place. Thanks.
So just a further question, is there a timing issue on this in terms of, obviously it's in front of us right now, and there was a question in terms of some additional information. Again, I always look at sort of the timing of these things in terms of when we have to absolutely initiate this, or would we have some time to gather a little bit more additional information for council's consideration? I'm just looking for some direction from staff here.
Maybe I can start and then Adam can fill in. Our conversations with the county has been really the only way we can remove ourselves from county administration for parking enforcement is to take the entire county program with us. That was a county preference, and I believe that was the POA preference as well, that they don't want to be dealing with multiple parties when it comes to parking administration. So really, we can't really initiate that administration change until council approves the resolution in front of us today. So that may result in either a modified program or a delay in the program if we don't sometime in the near future pass this resolution. But Adam, I don't know if you have anything you want to add to that.
No, I think you've effectively commented on that, Dan. My only other comment would be is the parking season is nearly upon us. And if there is some transition time required between ourselves and the county, like most things, time will be of the essence in order to get this facilitated.
Councillor Adams.
Through to you. Thanks, Mayor. Adam, if we just go back to the financial implications section again on the report, can you just confirm, like, so there's certain costs that have been here year after year with the program, right? So the annual parking enforcement costs of $114,000, that's been here year after year. That's the program cost, correct?
Yes, thank you for the question, Councillor Adams. That is absolutely correct. The only two new costs would be the associated hard costs and the per use for the system, which is just an incremental cost for utilization of the system, which is currently netted against our revenues from the county.
So just, sorry, if I could just clarify. So you mean the annual licensing cost, the $6,000, and then the hard costs, and then the one time is the $35,000 one time?
The $35,000 is our investment in the customization of the software incurred to date. So we won't be seeing that again. The only recurring cost would be the administrative hard cost, which would be kind of your envelopes, postage, other things of that nature, and the annual software cost, which is currently facilitated through the county but netted against our revenues.
And just one more follow-up to that. I'm just trying to get a picture of the financial implications. And so this is all capital. And then it was 40-some thousand that was charged back to the county for the administration of?
For the purposes of the staffing side of things, it was $30,000, which was the cost associated for administering the program for Center Wellington through that quarter FTE.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other comments or questions? Councillor McDonald.
Just for clarification, how we got here today is we asked our CAO to look into bringing this to Center Wellington, right? Yeah. Okay.
Any other comments or questions? Okay. Well, I am looking for some direction from council here. Okay. So I'm looking over. There was. Do you feel that your questions were answered, or? Okay.
My questions were answered, but I still have concerns.
Okay, that's always fair.
Yes.
Okay. Okay, so I think what we're going to do is we're going to bring this forward. So thank you, Adam. I'm going to read the recommendation that the Council of Township of Center Wellington establishes Alpha Technology System, Inc., OA Alpha Parking Solutions as a vendor of record providing municipal law enforcement services, and that ParkSmart software to automate parking operations in Center Wellington, and that the Council of Township of Center Wellington authorize staff to provide parking administration services across the county and delegate authority to the Managing Director of Corporate Services and Treasurer to execute the necessary agreements if required. Do I have a mover for that? Councillor McDonald, do I have a seconder on that? Councillor Craddock, any further comments or questions? Yes, go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor Waters. I would just be curious if we can separate the two parts of the recommendation so that we decide on them separately, or is it too late to do that now?
It's too late.
Is it too late?
But we're looking for staff here.
I guess with the permission of the seconder, you could kind of withdraw or agree to sever?
So, not putting words in Councillor Wilton's mouth, but it's obviously comfortable with one, not so comfortable with the other. That's, but we're still voting on all these things, so it's just a matter of separating the two. So it'd be up to the whether you're comfortable on doing that or just say go ahead. It's up to you. Good.
Chair, may I ask why would separate them? Just because of the administration part? Or I'm not understanding.
I think Mayor Waters explained correctly. He said comfortable with one part and not comfortable with the second part. So you could just vote separately on the two parts of the recommendation.
So then the second part will come back to council?
So one doesn't happen without the other. So,
there we go. Okay.
Yeah. So we're just gonna unfortunately, we're gonna have to vote it as a, so I've read that. We have a first, we have a seconder. Any further comments, questions on that?
Sorry, but just with the parking strategy in general, I'm a little uncomfortable with some of the language in the report. It makes it seem like we did approve it when it says implementing in stages and things like that. I had a quote from it and I won't be able to find it at the moment. But so I do think we need to be careful as the other components of the parking strategy come forward, because council never did approve the whole parking strategy. We only approved like the 3 hours enforcement for this summer and the shuttle bus and I think one other small thing. So I just think as we kind of go forward with parking, we need to be really mindful of that process. Thank you.
Councillor Wilton, you're very correct in that. And I think I'm of the mind, and I think other councillors are, that this is just one component of that. And we still need to deal with the balance of it. And I know that there was, we talked about public engagement, and there were some definitely other things in there. So I feel confident that we're just dealing with this particular item. So any other comments or questions, Councillor Adams?
Thank you, through you. I shared a similar concern in there, and I do know we approved the current program to run this year, similar to the way it was last year. But I'm wondering if there was any more information that could be provided to council on what the details of what that program looks like. Like I know in the report here, it reuses the verbiage about how it's like focused on like the downtown parking enforcement, but I think that enforcement program, as we call it, is doing enforcement throughout the whole township. And so it would just be valuable, I think, to get some details of what that enforcement program actually looks like. Yeah.
Through you, we are working on modeling for expansion of enforcement throughout the township in our work towards moving to an AMPS system. And we will bring all that forward in future reports. But be assured, we are looking at a modeling program with Alpha, to be honest with you, and to bring that enforcement not only county-wide, but township-wide, so that it's expanded beyond the core. Phased in, of course, and then phased in, moving from POA, the transition area, and then into an AMP system for the entire county is our overall objective. But it will take a considerable amount of this year and an awful lot of work to get us to a January 1 start time.
So just for follow-up before we vote, so that would be a further report too, that modeling too. Today, voting for this would be the administration of the current program as previously run. No further enforcement in our. Okay.
Yeah, you're right. This is just to cover what council approved, similar to previous years, and then we will be bringing back multiple reports, I think, in order to roll out this whole modeling and the whole transition to AMPS and to a more comprehensive enforcement system.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other comments or questions? Okay. So we have a mover, we have a seconder. I'll put it to a vote. All those in favor? It's so moved. Those not in favor? I just might as well. Anyways. Okay. So moved. Okay. We'll just, do you want to take just a bit of a hiatus? So we take a 5-minute hiatus and then when we get back, we'll adjust the deck chairs here. So, okay. Thank you. Okay, thanks for all coming back. We're going to move down to item 8.3, zoning amendment RZ 015-22, decision report 961 St. David Street North. And we have a report from Mariana. Welcome, Marianne.
The property, we'll get it up on the screen in a second here, is located at 961 St. David Street North. It is 1.4 hectare property, 3.4 acres, and it's located on the west side of St. David Street North, Highway 6, midway between Side Road 18 and Side Road 19, and within the Fergus Urban Center. Contains currently a residential dwelling and outbuildings that will be removed as part of the proposal. The property is in an area designated residential in the official plan and is adjacent to highway commercial designation to the north. It is surrounded by a mix of uses, including commercial to the north and residential to the south and east. The applicant seeks a zoning amendment to change the zoning from R1A exception to two higher density residential zones to facilitate an infill development of 49 residential units within a plan of condominium on a private internal road. And it will include 12 single detached units, and those are the ones that are colored in yellow there, to be zoned R2 residential, which is a small lot single residential zoning, and 37 street townhouses to be rezoned to R3 exception to accommodate some minor deficiencies related to the lots, lot sizes, and rear yards. There will also be a common amenity area proposed, which is the green. And so the street townhouses are in the orange. The proposal is for a medium density development that does not exceed the current limit of 35 units per hectare outlined in the official plan for a townhouse development on a major arterial roadway. So the official plan policies are met. It should be noted, though, that the official plan does allow up to 75 units per hectare if an apartment building was proposed on the same site. Several studies were submitted in support of the application, including a planning justification report, a functional servicing, stormwater management, hydrogeological study, a traffic impact statement or assessment, and a noise assessment. All are summarized in the attached planning justification report, which is attached to the planning report. Staff have had consultation with the applicant over a number of years prior to this proposal, trying to work out various matters such as servicing up Highway 6, and getting the density right, as well as other matters that I'll go through briefly. The public meeting was held on August 30th, 2023, where we received oral and written submissions. And some of the concerns raised, mostly by neighbors, were related to potential traffic, noise, wildlife and vegetation, and well water impacts, as well as compatibility concerns. All the concerns or all the comments are attached to the report, and along with the minutes of the public meeting that explain the delegation comments. Comments were also received from agencies, including the GRCA and the MTO and the school board, with no objections to the proposed development, and with recommendations to include specific conditions during detailed design to ensure that all considerations are addressed. Most of the issues have been addressed actually through the recommendations in the technical studies and will become conditions required through the draft approval of the plan of condominium. In addition, other matters such as detailed grading and drainage, tree removals, landscaping, and fencing will be addressed through future detailed design. It should be noted that the property falls within or outside of the connecting link, and therefore the road and traffic issues are under the jurisdiction of the MTO, who have reviewed the TIS, the traffic impact study, and concluded that no road improvements were warranted as a result of the development, and that acceptable levels of service would be maintained. Further municipal services are now available to the site as a result of recent service extension northward on Highway 6. The applicant has revised the overall design over time to reduce the overall unit count, provide safer pedestrian and vehicular circulation by adding an internal sidewalk, which you can see now along the middle there, adjacent to the yellow single detached units, extending the hammerhead turnaround lengths at the edge of the T at the bottom, if I can call it that, and adding 15 visitor parking spaces along the internal roadway, as well as adding common amenity area that you see there. Most of these items were actually not required by zoning, but were added to improve the overall functioning and safety of the site. Planning staff reviewed all the reports and peer reviews and generally agree with the assessment and conclusions reached in the attached planning justification report that provincial, county, and township planning policies are met for this application. As we're aware, there is a provincial mandate on facilitating increasing density and housing supply where services and amenities are available. Residential intensification of underutilized sites is encouraged. Compact housing forms contribute to reducing sprawl, reducing costs of infrastructure, and keeping new housing costs lower. Council's strategic direction is to plan for a mix of housing across the community and allow and encourage more housing types. The site is on a major arterial roadway, is close to numerous amenities, and will contribute to increasing the housing supply while being compatible within the current neighborhood context, which will be ensured through detailed future design as well. Should council approve this application, staff considers that endorsement of the plan and would then prepare the list of conditions to the county for draft approval of the related condominium, which would include all the typical conditions and a few others to address some of the site-specific issues through the technical studies. In conclusion, as discussed in the report, staff recommends approval of the zoning amendment to facilitate this 49-unit infill residential development proposal, and I'm happy to answer any questions. And I know that Ms. Vacandio is here as well to answer questions.
Thank you, Mariana. Comments, questions? Councillor McDonald.
To you, Mayor Waters. I've noticed a big concern from the public over water drainage and concerns about some dug wells. And would there be a future opportunity for them to go online with the infrastructure for this being close by at all? Or how are we going to deal with this part?
Thank you for the question. And through Mayor Waters, there are technical studies that have been received that do assess that, and as well as well monitoring that is proposed as a condition. So that would be done through the process. There are probably some units or lots that are not connected to services that may have an opportunity to connect. We don't force connection, but if they do want to connect, there would be an opportunity there, I imagine. And they would basically have to request that, and then it would be assessed at that time.
Any other comments, questions from council? Yes, go ahead, Councillor Adams.
Sorry, just a clarifying question. The only entrance exit is from St. David Street, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
And MTO said there was no further road improvements necessary for this development.
That's correct.
Okay.
In terms of connection, sidewalk connection to the I guess to the more urban area to the south of here, is there a requirement for that, or how is that being looked at?
Question through you, Mayor Waters. What's happening is there's a lot of discussion right now on Highway 6 and how that's going to be treated. Through this redevelopment, we are going to take a portion that would contribute to the sidewalk that will be in front of this property, and then that will be held until such time as the sidewalk discussions are completed and there's a design, hopefully in the future.
Councillor McDonald.
Through you, Mayor Waters, do we know who the builder is? Who's going to build the condos?
No, through you, no, not at this time.
Okay.
I'm not sure. Not known.
So this is being developed for condos, but we don't know who's going to build these condos? Okay, thank you.
Any other comments or questions? Yes, Councillor Adams.
So I know the last time we saw this, sorry, through you, Mayor, there was comments made from, I think, the public and council about the hedgerow. And I'm wondering if you could speak to, I know you said the hedgerow is being removed, and that there will have to be that tree preservation plan. So what kind of requirements will we see put on this development through a tree preservation plan at minimum?
Thank you for the question. Through you, Mayor Waters. The trees would be assessed. So there would be a tree inventory and then a protection plan. So those trees, there's been a commitment to retain as many trees as possible. Those trees would have to be protected and those protection measures would be shown. And then any of the trees that need to be removed as a result of the development would be compensated, typically in 2 to 1 tree on site wherever possible. And then if not, we would look at options for off-site, but ideally they would be compensated on site.
Just to follow up to that, and a replacement, it's not of similar size, is it, when they have to replace?
We typically have standards that they're a certain size, caliper size and type of tree, so native. So there are some guidelines that we use from the Public Forestry Manual.
Thank you.
Any other comments, questions? I know we just came through a stormwater management forum there. So I'm wondering if this is an opportunity to utilize something like this for ideas of innovative infiltrations, LIDs, that type of thing. I think this would be an excellent opportunity to look at this, given sort of the density here and just how we need to look at these as a good model for how we move forward on these types of things. So I just throwing that out right now. So anyways, any other comments or questions? Okay, so I'm going to read my thing, which I don't have it right in front of me.
Okay.
Okay. So I have a recommendation that the Council of the Township of Centre Wellington approves application RZ 015-22 and a bylaw to amend the zoning bylaw be given 3 readings. So do I have a mover for that? Councillor Adams, do I have a seconder on that? Councillor Jefferson, any further comments or questions? Yes.
Just one question, and it kind of leads into our next report about traffic calming. So when we have these new developments go in, is it kind of like an automatic when these developments come in that that they're a part of the study area for like our traffic studies for that year? Or should they be?
Yeah, no, thanks for the question, Councillor Adams, and through Mayor Waters. So short answer is no. Basically, when new development areas are designed, we're building traffic calming measures into new developments right from day one. So we want to make sure that we like to see curb extensions, narrow travel lanes. As we know, if road feels like a highway, drivers will drive like it's a highway. So trying to narrow things up, on-street parking, and these things tend to slow traffic down. It creates a bit of friction. So for new developments, we're trying to address the issue from day one and make sure it's designed in accordance with best practices.
Any other further comments or questions? Okay. All those in favor? So moved. Thank you. We'll just wait for, sorry, I didn't. Okay. Are those opposed? Okay. Thank you. Welcome back, Councillor Wilton. Okay, so we're going to move down to item 8.4, annual speeding limit and traffic calming review recommendation. report from Adam Gilmore. Welcome. Welcome, Adam.
Thank you, Mayor Waters. Pleased to be here to present to you and members of council. This is now our third annual report. And just to remind council, the purpose of this report is there's really two main objectives. The first is to review current posted speed limits on our streets, subject them to an analysis to determine are there technical merits to reducing the speed limit, all with the objective of making our road network safer. And then the second part of it is looking at concerns that we've received from residents through members of council or through our online Report It tool that we've established. It's been quite popular. Looking at those concerns and then determining where we have confirmed speeding issues, where we can implement traffic calming measures to, again, try and make our streets and road network safer. So with that said, I won't go through the details of the report with you, given that it's your second year seeing this, and I'm happy to answer any questions or hear any comments you have on any of the findings or recommendations. Thank you.
Thank you, Adam. Comments, questions, Councillor Wilton.
Thank you, Adam, and I really appreciate these reports. I think it's great. We're being kind of proactive in terms of addressing the speeding in the community, so thank you for that. I was just curious, a couple little things, and I have sent this question in, so I think you saw it. The question about does the road feel safe for drivers, which to me feels funny when it should be, does the road feel safe for pedestrians and cyclists? And so I'm just curious if you could speak to that a little bit, and in particular, one road as an example is South River Road. If you look at the AAA that we talk about in terms of all ages, all anywhere, or all ages, all abilities, thank you, all anywhere. That makes no sense. Anyway, just thinking about that in terms of if you're an 8-year-old walking or biking on South River Road, or if you're an 80-year-old walking or biking on South River Road, I question whether you'd actually feel safe. So the two parts of that question, that test of does it feel safe for vehicle drivers, and then the South River Road as an example of that. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Councillor Wilton, for the questions. Good questions, and through the mayor. That question, okay, so I'll start with this. The safety for cyclists and pedestrians, that is factored into the assessment. And the way it's done is we use this Transportation Association of Canada tool for determining appropriate speed limits. And within that tool, there are actually criteria that speak to the exposure of pedestrians and cyclists within a road segment. So if the answer is yeah, or if the exposure is moderate to high, then that does force the speed limit lower typically in that assessment. So that is factored into that part of it. The purpose of that question, really, it is geared more towards drivers, and it's because the goal is for us to determine what feels comfortable to drive on that road, and hence what speed are they likely to drive at on that road segment, because we know that driver behavior is influenced by the geometry of the road. Colin talked about some of these points of friction that kind of force people to slow down. So we want to drive it and know what speed does it feel safe to drive at, and hence do we need to change something about the road to try and force people to drive at the speed we're recommending, or the posted speed if there's a speeding concern. So yeah, so your point is well taken, and I think that the cyclists and pedestrians are factored into the assessment already through that TAC tool that we use.
Thank you, Adam. And through Mayor Waters, just follow up then in terms of the pedestrian exposure and the cyclist exposure in the TAC tool. What does that mean? Like, what are you actually measuring? How many people are actually out there, or how close they are, or what's the criteria there, I guess?
Okay, yes, thank you for the question. So through the mayor again. So is there a cycling facility located within that segment? Then the cyclist exposure would be high. So in the case of South River Road, for example, that is a cycling route through our trails loop. So that the answer would be yes to cyclist exposure there. If we have a sidewalk adjacent to the segment, then that would be pedestrian exposure. How close is the sidewalk to the road? Is it a curb face sidewalk, or it's directly adjacent to the road, or is there a boulevard in between? So yeah, so it's kind of looking at the users adjacent to the roadway. Another thing we look at is neighboring vulnerable land use. So is it located in proximity to a school, a playground, a seniors facility? And, that would also force that would result in a recommendation to lower speed limit potentially. And the second part of your first question, if I could answer that. So South River Road. So yeah, so we've looked at South River Road, and I think that that's a segment we're actually kind of monitoring every year. We have made some changes there. We implemented the active transportation facilities last year, where we went and widened the shoulder and painted edge lines for cyclists and pedestrians to use that road. And I think that's one we're continuing to monitor every year. We're getting new speed data from that segment to see what is the 85th percentile speed that drivers are actually driving out there. And, do we need to be considering changes year over year?
Councillor Adams.
Thank you, through you, Mayor. And thank you, Councillor Wilton. I think you hit upon a lot of points. And also we're using an example that I think a road we're all quite familiar with, but one that I definitely get a lot of complaints brought forward because of safety concerns. And I know we're monitoring every year, and I know we're doing a lot of great work here. A couple of things. So you had mentioned, so there's would a park, or does it have to meet a definition? Like there is a park, right there on South River Road. Is that identified as like a park along that road as well? Yeah.
Yeah. So to answer your question, through the mayor. So typically, yes, if we have a park adjacent, that would be considered a vulnerable neighboring land use.
Okay. And just a quick follow up to that, the TAC tool that you speak of, is that like a mandatory tool that is used that sets like minimums, or like, is there different thresholds that you're like kind of aiming for?
Yeah, so so thanks again for the question, through the mayor. So we look at this a number of different ways. The TAC tool is just one of the kind of the criteria that we look at. It is an industry standard kind of best practice, but we didn't want to just see what that spits out and then recommend that, right? So we kind of look at it different ways. We have the TAC tool. What is that recommending? And then we do the drive test. We look at the vulnerable land uses, and then we kind of put together a reasoned argument for, do we recommend lowering or maintaining? You'll notice in the assessment that there are cases where the TAC tool is recommending lowering, but we're not doing that. And usually there's a rationale for that. One of them being sometimes it's on roads where when we look at the 85th percentile speed, it's almost not, it's not possible to get driving fast enough on that road. Like we're hearing concerns, but we look at the 85th percentile speed, it's already 40, so if it's 50, by signing at 40, there's not going to be much benefit because people are already driving 40 on it. Or 60 to 50 or 50 to 40, 80 to 60, whatever the case may be. Yeah.
Councillor McDonald.
Through you, Mayor Waters. Thank you. I really do like these reports. It's nice to see it on this side. For many years, we've had complaints on South River Road. I fully understand where Councillor Wilton and Adams are coming from. And I'm looking at Water Street, like we're reducing Water Street to 40. So just based on years of complaints, can't we just make it 40? I realize you have to have justification to do things. I just feel like we've exhausted everything in our toolbox, but we're still getting complaints for the public. So couldn't we just pilot 40 kilometers? I've heard from the other side of the tracks, mostly from my children, Mom, this whole town is 40 kilometers an hour. And I said, yes, we need to slow down. But I just have to put that out there that, you know, how do we weigh all the complaints for speeding on that road with what we're doing on other roads? I understand you are using everything in your toolbox possibly, but it's been years. So I just have to put that out there. Thank you.
Any other?
Could we do a pilot project? That's what I'm asking.
Councillor McDonald for the sharing the concern / question there, and through the mayor. So you know, we try to take an objective approach to this, and we establish this process. And we try to follow that. Now that said, you know, like I know one of the factors that has a big impact on the recommended speed is the class of road, and I believe that South River Road is classified as an arterial road, which will push the recommendation towards maintaining a higher speed limit. Now that said, again, we're looking at this from multiple angles, and we're not just kind of taking that TAC recommendation as what we should be doing. With staff we can certainly take that away, and we've heard these concerns. You know, perhaps we can take one more look at it on South River Road and see if there's something, if we come to a different conclusion.
Councillor Wilton.
Love the suggestion, Councillor McDonald. Thank you. But no, my parents no longer live there, so I don't think I have a conflict anymore. But having helped them move out of their house this winter and trying to get in and out of the driveway, feels incredibly not safe to get in and out of driveways on South River Road. And I'm just thinking again that all ages, all abilities, there is no way people would send, that's one of the reasons my parents moved. They're in their 80s, very active, very healthy people, did not feel safe walking. So I'm curious if we could do something like even dropping it to 50, if the average speed is posted here in the 85 percentile, you have it listed as 71. That would ding some people some pretty good tickets if it was a 50 zone. So that might encourage a little bit reduction in speed. And then for your process moving forward, can you add a question to your test in terms of does it feel safe from a pedestrian and cyclist perspective, in addition to that feeling safe from the driver's perspective? So getting a little bit at that walkability and accessibility for active transportation through the community, because right now I don't think if any of us walk down that road, it feels pretty scary. So just 2 suggestions.
Any other comments? Councillor Jefferson.
Thank you, Mayor Waters. Mine are not on South River Road. Sorry, jump over to the lovely pilot project that's taking place on York Street. I was also wondering, it's talking about posting the new 40-kilometer-an-hour speed signs, but I was also wondering if there's going to be any extra stop signs, speed bumps, digital speed monitoring. Like, how are we processing the speeds in there? And also just because it is a heavily traveled road now due to all the construction in our South Elora area. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Councillor Jefferson. So through the mayor, great question and comment. Firstly, there will be information signs going up very soon in that neighborhood, informing everyone of the pending pilot projects. We look forward to getting those up. Those will be followed by the new 40-kilometer-per-hour signs, which will be installed next month to actually kick off the pilot study. For that pilot study, we don't want to modify the conditions too much because we really want to compare kind of the pre and post 40-kilometer-per-hour signage to see how effective the signs are in changing driver behavior. So if we were to also install those traffic calming measures there this summer, it wouldn't be clear to us perhaps what the impact of the 40-kilometer-per-hour signage is. And that's really what we're trying to determine with this pilot program. So I think it might be a bit premature to implement traffic calming measures in that neighborhood. We're going to be collecting a bunch more data this summer while the pilot study is in effect to see what the impact is. And then I think that we can make a determination after that if there is any additional traffic calming required in that neighborhood, if the speed limits will remain 40 in that neighborhood, and kind of what we do going forward in other neighborhoods too in the township.
Councillor Adams and then Councillor Wilton.
Thank you. Bringing it back to South River Road. I do note that all of the roads currently listed here are classified as urban, with the exception of Second Line, which is rural, which actually is going down from a 80 to a 60, and South River Road is classified as not urban or rural, but as a boundary, which I would argue that that we could call that rural. And so we have like a rural road going down to 60, and we still have this South River Road, which has just as many people. It's hard to tell where that boundary may be. I think we're all within the township of Center Wellington, so I don't know what boundary we're talking about. And if that had been changed to rural, would that have changed our outputs here? Or not rural, we wouldn't change it to rural, to urban, sorry.
Yeah. Yeah, thanks for the question. So through the mayor. So the rural urban distinction has a bearing on how we determine if there's a speeding issue or not. So we kind of develop the parameters. If it's 10, if the 85th percentile is greater than 10 kilometers per hour in the urban, there isn't an issue. If it's greater than 15 in the rural, then we have an issue. So it would impact the assessment of is there a speeding concern or not. Yeah, I believe we treat boundary roads as urban roads. So I think we apply that lens to it. So it would have been treated as an urban road for the purpose of determining if there's a speeding issue.
Thank you. And yes, skipping away from South River Road for a moment, just good to see second line is being reduced because I know there's been a lot of discussion about that one. So that's good. And just wanted to confirm that streets that were identified to have lower posted speed limits in last year's report will get their signs first. So speaking particularly of the St. Andrew School or St. John Black School area on St. Andrew Street.
Sir Wilton, and through the mayor. So yes, we have a backlog of signs from last year that we need to get to, and those are taking first priority this year. And in the case of St. Andrew Street East, it's in the top 3. We have Geary Road, St. Andrew Street, and there was another one too. I can't recall off the top of my head, but there were 3 that kind of leftovers from last year. The first line, thank you, Councillor Jefferson, of course. How could I forget about the first line? That's right. Yeah, east of Bridge Street. Thanks.
Councillor Adams.
Yes, and I'm Adam. I'm just wondering if you could just for like again a good reminder for our residents, kind of just review which areas are how they're chosen on here, and just maybe a bit of a reminder about the report it tool that the public can use.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Councillor Adams, and through the mayor. So we have developed our Report It online reporting tool. You can go to the Report It section of the township's website, and there's a button there that that's labeled speeding concern. And so we do encourage residents when they have speeding concerns to go on and use that tool, because it goes directly to one of our technicians, and we develop a database of all of those concerns, and then that's what points us in the direction of we should be assessing through this annual report. So it's very important. If people don't want to use the online reporting tool, they can always phone into our office also, or communicate their concerns to council, and it all finds its way into that database. But yeah, we do encourage people to use that.
Any other comments, questions? Yes. Councillor Wilton.
Just on the South River Road piece, is there any opportunity between now and next year's report, or is that kind of to look at that again? You said you are monitoring it, and is there an opportunity some point between now? Because then I think another year of might cause frustration, and as development continues along that stretch of road, there's more and more cars all the time, and also with the work going on County Road 7, a lot of people are going to be taking South River Road as a cut through, I believe. So.
Yeah, thanks, Councillor Wilton. Through the mayor, absolutely. This report is for council's consideration, but this all comes into effect when we amend the bylaw, which follows this report. Typically in the summer, we'll follow up with amending our consolidated speed bylaw to bring these recommendations into legal effect. So we do have time to take another look at South River Road, and if changes are warranted, then we could make those changes through that bylaw amendment.
Any other comments, questions? I have a comment, and I thought I'd jump in on the South River Road one, so because I was feeling kind of left out here. The comments that I've gotten from residents along there is the non-consistency of the speed limit. Like it starts out in Fergus and goes up and then comes back down again. And I think that's frustrating for especially some of the residents there, because traffic seems in the middle there to be a lot faster than it does in the beginning and sort of the end point. And the comment was, I think people would prefer sort of a consistency that way, so that traffic is consistent along there, the speed of it. I just noticed the other day I was leaving Fergus. There was a police officer following behind me, so I literally just went the speed limit along there, and it was to be honest, it was awkward. You know, you were going 40 and then you're up to, I think, 60 and then back down, and you're always cognizant of where you are. So even the consistency of the speed limit, I think, would be sort of I think that would be welcomed in that area. But anyways, we can talk about that further, and I think you've heard enough about South River Road that you probably have dreams about it tonight. So so anyways, we'll leave that there for now. And so thank you again and I appreciate all your efforts in terms of the report. So I know that there's a lot of work done here. So thank you, Adam. So we have a recommendation. The Council of Township of Centre Wellington endorses recommendations outlined in report number IS 2024-18 related to proposed speed limit reductions on the township roads to be implemented through upcoming amendment to the township consolidated speed bylaw, and that council direct staff to proceed with the implementing speed reductions measures as outlined in report number IS 2024-18. Do we have a mover for that? Councillor Wilton. Seconder on that, Councillor Adams. Any further comments or questions? Seeing none, all those in favor? So moved. Thank you. Okay, now we'll move down to item 8.5, Rural Transit Solution Fund Planning and Design Projects stream report by Colin. Welcome, Colin.
Great. Thanks, Mayor Waters and Council. So, yeah, happy to report. There's a grant opportunity from the federal government. The program is called Rural Transit Solutions Fund Planning and Design Project Stream, and basically. The purpose of this is to assist municipalities largely develop plans to implement transit. And as the title implies, it's kind of focused on smaller rural communities. And so staff are recommending that we apply. So the parameters of the program, basically, it's like a feasibility study, really, that would lay the groundwork for transit within the community. And the grant would cover up to $50,000. And council may recall too, there is actually a transit service study within the 10-year capital forecast. I believe it's in 2026 currently. So this would advance that by probably a year and a bit, and obviously provide some grant funding for that as well. So we are recommending a revision to the budget to make the overall upset limit of the project $120,000. That will allow for public consultation, consultation with council-appointed advisory committees, and doing some open houses as well to get some community input as part of the study. And yeah, basically, it's an open-ended one too. There was a deadline on this study for applications, but that kind of went away. So they're just accepting applications as submitted. But I think from staff's perspective, we'd like to submit this if approved, probably within the next week or so. And yeah, happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Colin. Comments, questions from council? Councillor Wilton.
Just two comments. Very good news and very exciting. So I hope the application goes. I'm totally in favor of this. So hopefully it goes forward. My only comment would be if it does go forward, we'll have 3 studies, I believe, going on, fairly large ones that will involve a lot of public engagement. So, so just for all the leads on those projects, like Pat and yourself one too, then probably would be to coordinate that public engagement and community engagement, just because it might get overwhelming almost to know what you're answering questions about and which workshops to go to and things like that. But other than that, like, fantastic, and hope this all moves forward. So great.
Any other comments, questions for Colin here? Okay, thank you, Colin. Very exciting. We have a recommendation that the Council of Township of Centre Wellington direct staff to apply for grant funding for a transit service study under the Rural Transit Solution Fund Planning and Design Project Stream, and that Council delegate authority to the Chief Administrative Officer, and that the Managing Director of Corporate Services Treasurer to execute the funding agreement and related documents associated with the grant, and that Council approve the township share of project funding in amount of $70,000 should the township grant application be successful, as outlined in report number IS 2024-16 dated April 15th, 2024. Do I have a mover on that? Councillor Wilton, seconder on that. Councillor McDonald, any further comments, questions? Thank you. All those in favor? So moved. Now we move down to item 8.6, South Fergus Master Plan Servicing Plan. So just wait for Councillor Wilton to leave. Okay, so we have a report from Brett Salmon.
Thank you, Mayor Waters. Through you to Council. At our last meeting on March 25th, as you know, we had a joint discussion regarding the South Fergus Master Environmental Servicing Plan and the secondary plan. The secondary plan was held over for a committee meeting, which is happening this evening. But you'll see on the report that follows this one is regarding a grant application for the servicing of South Fergus. And so the CAO and Managing Director of Infrastructure Services and I discussed bringing forward the Master Environmental Servicing Plan part of the South Fergus Servicing Strategy in order that it be endorsed to complement our grant application, which Colin can explain in more detail. We think it's important to move forward. We didn't hear particular concerns about the servicing part of South Fergus from Council, and we are confident that even if there are some modifications made to the secondary plan, it won't change the ultimate servicing strategy. We do have steps to go forward if the Council approves this recommendation. I think it was discussed the last time. There's a notice period and things like that that we have to do. So we think it's important to get moving on that, given the report that will follow.
Thank you, Brett. Comments, questions from Council? Councillor Adams.
Thank you, through you, Mayor. It kind of leads into the next report, but the areas identified in the plan that are referred to as the off-road trail or off-road trail, does that mean like that's what it currently is, or that's what expected to remain or be in the future? And what is it?
Quite sure I'm understanding the question.
Okay.
Yeah.
I thought so.
Yeah,
Thanks,
so
Colin.
that's and through Mayor Waters. So that, I think you're referring to, it's section 2. Yeah, section 2. So it's part of the Guelph Street Road allowance, really. There's, I think locally it's known as Vinegar Hill, right? And so that's basically the route that the infrastructure, the external works would require. Yeah, so the off-road, reference to an off-road trail is the restoration of that area. So it would be essentially configured. It is essentially a trail today, and the restoration would would incorporate a future off-road trail, basically.
Do you have another question? Or
just to kind of follow up on that. So any restoration would follow kind of today's standards of our with that tie-in. Like, is that being looked at like in terms of our mobility, active transportation ability, like abilities
for Mayor Waters? 100%. So it would, we would look at that in more detail. I think there's an opportunity to do some improvements there, I would say, and kind of re-envision. We're going to do, if this gets approved, it's a large infrastructure project, and we would work closely with parks and the community, the neighborhood, of course, to I think kind of reimagine that area and kind of work in any improvements that could be accomplished through the capital project.
Any other comments, questions from council? Okay. Oh, yes, go ahead.
Brett, a question for you. Can you just confirm what the timing of these, like the servicing would be, or is it too contingent on other items?
Well, if you look at the South Fergus secondary plan as a whole, I think the servicing strategy is clear that the first portion of the development to take place is south of McQueen Boulevard and east of Highway 6, where we have infrastructure that it would connect to already. So that would be the first phase. And the project that the next report will be discussing is then all the rest of South Fergus, what does it connect to? And so that's the connecting infrastructure. So I think, obviously a large infrastructure project like that takes a considerable amount of time. We think the first phase of development that could happen if council endorses the secondary plan itself in the near future, that we might see development applications on that either later this year or into next year for that small part of it. And preparing the external infrastructure is to get ready so that when they do move to west of Highway 6, they can connect that pumping station to that infrastructure. So it's still a few years off, but there's so much work to be done to get there.
Okay. Any other further comments, questions as it relates to this item? Okay. Thank you, Brett. We have a recommendation that the Council of Township of Centre Wellington endorse the South Fergus Master Environmental Servicing Plan. Do I have a mover for that? Councillor Craddock, seconder, Councillor Adams. Any further comments or questions? Okay. Seeing none, all those in favor? So moved. Thank you. Item 8.7, Housing Enabling Water System Fund application for the extension of municipal services to the South Fergus secondary plan area. And Colin.
Okay, thanks, Mayor Waters. And yeah, 'tis the season for grants right now. So this grant is a provincial grant, really looking at funding water, wastewater, stormwater projects that result in housing growth, housing development, and so. At the senior management team, we've talked about, different projects that could be applied for. We're really looking at projects that are almost shovel ready, like the monies under this program would need to be spent by March 31st, 2027, which means largely completed by the end of the construction season in 2026. So these are projects that are, kind of started the planning stage and are kind of maybe into a preliminary design phase, and also result in kind of housing construction. So we staff feel that the external works for the South Fergus secondary plan area are a great candidate project for this grant. Kind of checks all the boxes and meets the criteria for funding under this grant program. And Basically, in the report, you'll see there's a kind of an overview of the scope of work. It's basically broken down into 4 segments. Segment 1 starts at essentially the pumping station. So this is the force main that would receive flows from that future pumping station on the South Fergus lands. So that pumping station, or the force main, is going to basically be built right down Guelph Street and across Union right to Tower Street. And actually, there's a bit of a gravity sewer just as one approaches Tower Street on Union. And so all that would be, anything existing would be upsized, but the force main would be brand new. There's also some water main work as well. So water main extension to the South Fergus lands, also some replacements. We do have a couple of segments of existing water main on Union, and those would be, they're approaching their end of service life. So those would be replaced as part of this. And also, as we do with kind of development related projects, not just looking at underground, we want to make sure the road is brought up to a more modern standard. So these are all kind of rural cross sections for the most part through there. No sidewalks or very limited pedestrian cyclist facilities. So we feel there's opportunity to incorporate active transportation, whether it's through kind of our multi-use paths, off-road trails, or sidewalks. So I've kind of outlined in attachment 1 kind of the different segments, and in the report kind of breaks down kind of the vision for each one of those segments. It's a substantive grant. The province is looking to fund up to a maximum of 73% of eligible costs, up to a cap of 35 million per project. So it's very substantial. And just in terms of where our project kind of sits, we're looking at approximately 12.6 million in total cost for this project as it's scoped today, with 8.1 million in eligible costs. So of water, wastewater, stormwater costs, so 73% of that 8.1 million would be eligible under this grant. So pretty substantial grant program. I would note, for the balance of the costs, our growth related costs, we entered into service financing agreements. Council saw the one for Geary Road kind of late last year. And we would do something similar here with the developer group for South Fergus to secure kind of the road related costs and other development charges related costs that we look for front ending for as part of external work projects. So staff are looking for council support to apply for this grant, applications are due on Friday, so at midnight. So we got lots of time. It's midnight Friday night, April 19th. So happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Colin, for that. We'll start with Councillor McDonald.
Through your Mayor Waters, I won't turn down grant funding for sure. I just kind of feel like this is all the cart before the horse sort of thing in discussions tonight or today. But that's a chunk of money that, I won't turn down. So thank you.
Councillor Adams.
Yeah, I think we should have a motion to allow Colin to leave the meeting to finish the grant and to get it submitted. Yeah, but no, I'm kidding. This is a great report and I'm fully supportive. I think these are the kinds of grant programs and everything that we should be applying to, and the province should be helping us out with. What was the one question here? I think that actually we would see a little bit of enhancements to that South River Road that we were talking about too, and like the 4th segment of this as well. So completely supportive of this. And I don't know with the tight turnaround or if it's already something that the staff are looking to, should we be reaching out to our MPP for a letter of support or something with the project? I don't know.
Yeah, through Mayor Waters. I certainly will reach out to, Ted Arnott's office and make him aware that we are applying. And any assistance he could provide would be appreciated, of course. Yeah.
Any other comments, questions as it relate to this? Yeah. Very exciting. Obviously, the province is, moving forward on whatever carrots they need to offer out there to accelerate the housing portfolio. And if these things are out there, I know sometimes it feels like they're just sort of coming at the last minute, but unfortunately, this is the way this program has been rolling out. And but where there's an opportunity to look at this, I think we definitely have to look at it, given the fact that we know there's going to be development on the south end of Fergus. So, anyways, thanks for your discussion on this. So we have a recommendation that the Council of Township of Centre Wellington supports the extension of municipal services to the South Fergus secondary plan area as outlined in report number IS 2024-15 dated April 15, 2024, and that the Council directs staff to submit an application under the Housing Enabling Water System Fund for the design and construction of external works required to service the South Fergus secondary plan area, and that Council delegates authority to the Chief Administrative Officer and Managing Director of Corporate Services / Treasurer to execute the funding agreement and any documents related to securing the funding should the Township grant application be successful. Do you have a mover for that? Councillor Adams, seconder on that. Councillor Jefferson, any further comments or questions? Okay, seeing none, all those in favor? So moved, and all the best. We're going to move down. Oh, we'll just wait for Councillor Welton to come back in. Okay, we're now moving to item 8.8, request for tender 1224, reconstruction of St. David Street North, and a report from Adam, Colin, or is it all this? Yeah, Adam. Okay, thank you, Adam.
Thank you, Mayor Waters, and through you, this report provides recommendations and seeks council approval for the award of request for tender 12-24 regarding the reconstruction of St. David Street North. Recommendations are that the council award request for tender 12-24 to Drexler Construction Limited at a contract price of $6,965,000. That's including contingency and excluding HST, and that the project funding be updated as shown in attachment A of this report. The tender was issued in accordance with the township's purchasing and procurement bylaw. There were 44 registered plan takers and 5 submissions received. The bids were checked for errors and omissions by the township's consulting engineer, Triton Engineering, and no errors were found. Triton Engineering has recommended and staff support tender award to Drexler Construction Limited. Award to this vendor, who is the lowest cost, responsive, and responsible bidder, falls within allocated budget. And pursuant to section 2.2E of the township's procurement policy, the CAO has directed staff to submit a report to council for approval. With that, I'm happy to field any questions the council may have.
Thank you, Adam. Comments, questions? Councillor Adams.
Thank you, Adam. I think the big good news on this one as well is like the total project's over $900,000 under budget. So I'm just curious. There has been some concerns with that area in terms of parking and active transportation and all of those things. Should we be directing this over budget into any kind of project specifically? Is there any recommendations on what to do with that at this time?
Thanks for the question, Councillor Adams, and through you, Mayor Waters. As is typically the case, any budget underages was typically held in general capital reserve. To suggest that this project will come in under budget, while optimistic as we are, remains to be seen. There is contingency requirements within the confines of that budget. So I would be reluctant to earmark any of those funds immediately for that. The funding is comprised of a number of sources, of which is an MTO contribution of about $2.9 million. We also have OSIF funding being a contributor for the phase one works of this, along with OLG money. So anything that would be underspent at that point would likely go back into a general capital reserve, which could then at that point be identified for specific projects and enhancement of those things that you've identified.
Any other comments or questions for staff here? Okay, do we have a mover for this? Thank you, Adam. Do we have a mover for this recommendation? Oh, sorry, I'll read the recommendation first. That the Council Township of Centre Wellington award request for tender 12-24 regarding reconstruction of St. David Street North, Highway 8 number 6 to Drexler Construction Limited at a contract price of $6,965,000, including contingency and excluding HST, and the project funding be updated as shown in Report Core 2024-16, dated April 15th, 2024. Do we have a mover for this? Councillor Wilton, seconder, Councillor McDonald. Any further comments or questions as it relates to this? Okay, seeing none, all those in favor? So moved. Thank you. This one. I'm just thinking, Councillor Wilton on second G. Okay. We're down to bylaws. 2024-11, a bylaw to amend the Township of Centre Wellington zoning bylaw 2009-045 as amended to change the zoning of certain lands from A to A 24.3 and A to A 24.4. 8196 Wellington Road, 19 West Scarefraxa. I'll jump down to a bylaw 2024-13, a bylaw to authorize the mayor and clerk to execute horticultural service agreement with the Corporation of Township of Centre Wellington and Groves Memorial Community Hospital. Next, 2024-14, a bylaw to amend the bylaw 2019-35, being a bylaw to regulate the setting of open air fires in the Township of Centre Wellington. So there's a recommendation that bylaws 2024-11, 2024-13, 2024-14, be read a first, second, and third time and pass signed by the mayor and clerk and the corporate seal affix. Do I have a mover for that? Councillor McDonald, seconder, Councillor Jefferson. Any further comments or questions on that? No? All those in favor? So moved. And then I'll go back to bylaw 2024-12, a bylaw to amend the Township of Centre Wellington zoning bylaw 2009-045 as amended to change the zoning of subject land from R1A 70.1 to R2, and that R1A 70.1 to R3 70.7, 961 St. David Street North, Fergus. Do you have a mover on that? Councillor Craddock, seconder on that. Councillor Adams, any further comments or questions? All those in favor? So moved. Okay, we're down to notice of motions. None. Motions where notices have been given. And confirmatory bylaw to confirm the actions of council recommendation that the bylaw 2024-15 to confirm the proceedings of council in its meeting held April 15, 2024 be introduced the first, second, and third and pass to open council. Do we have a mover on that? Councillor Wilton, seconder on that. Councillor McDonald, all those in favor? So moved. And then adjournment, do we have a mover for that? Councillor McDonald, the seconder on that. Councillor Wilton, all those in favor? So moved. And then we will be vacating downstairs. There's things ready for us downstairs. And then we'll be rolling back at 6. Thank you.